Where them Catholics at? Yeah. Yo, where them Catholics at? Man, what's the matter with these bishops?
Bienvenidos de nuevo a otro episodio del programa Católico Converge. I'm just kidding again, but Ed wasn't surprised this time, so kind of disappointed.
No, I wasn't.
He's like, no, he's doing that.
I'm on to you.
Again. It's all right. But listen, we finally made it to the end of the week. And at least at the end of my week, because
we did?
Yeah. It's the end of my week because I've finally gotten an extra 3 days coming up where I don't have to play chauffeur for teenagers and my wife. So I'm going to enjoy that these next 3 days and spend most of the time assaulting people's eardrums on this show.
Excellent.
Yeah, sounds like a plan. You know, I do got to say, though, after yesterday, we finally got a break in the heat wave. I know you're still getting assaulted up there, but we finally got a break in it. We actually got some. Yeah, we got some breezes. We got some rain. Got assaulted by a frog this morning. So the weather's finally turning. I will say, I do think that I do think the winter down here this year is going to suck because everybody always has this misconception about winter in the South. They're like, oh, it doesn't get cold down there. I'm sorry, it was -8 last December. Yeah, that still happens in the South, but yeah, I just kind of figures I can go 6 weeks having to cut grass every single week, and then another 6 weeks of not a drop of rain. I've got, 6 weeks of growth in my yard outside. It might be about, I don't know, 9-10 inches tall. I'm like, is it safe to cut it yet? Because I don't want to, cut it now and get washed out and it grows again next week. Because I could just let it die. But speaking of dying, you know what's not dying? All these random attacks of vandalism on the church. So there was a New York parish a couple of weeks ago it was in Queens, actually. And there's a family statue there. It's our Holy Family. We've got our Mama Mary, the terror of demons, Joseph, and the Christ child. And it's at the corner of 7th Avenue and Utopia Parkway, and it was vandalized 2 weeks ago. And the attack resulted in the head of the child Jesus breaking off. Apparently, someone pulled up to the parish in a yellow cab, and then he ran up to the statue, took off his shoe, which is a very odd thing to do, and struck the statue multiple times with it, and it beheaded the depiction of Jesus. Now, the vandalism cost the church about $3,000. Yet the individual who did it is now in question, and I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce the guy's first name, but his last name is Chowdhury. Definitely a strong Irish Catholic name. And he's been arrested, charged with a hate crime. Now, there is something that I noticed. I got the news about this a couple of weeks ago, shortly after that weird satanic statue that was supposed to be some kind of monument to women and Ruth Ginsburg was beheaded. You know what I'm talking about? That golden one with the spiral ponytail.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Braid thing. Yeah. So that one was beheaded, and this one kind of happened like shortly after. And I was wondering if it was or maybe it happened right before. I don't know. But I was wondering if those two were connected, as if one happened and then the other was an act of retaliation or whatever. And I see people trying to jump into this story, and they're saying, well, if it's okay to have these people like in Ohio destroy statues of Beelzebub and these other satanic statues, then why is it a problem when these Catholic statues and these Christian statues are being vandalized and destroyed? Well, here's my take on it. Not all religions are equal. And I know that sounds very unconstitutional, but hear me out. All religions are equal under the law, but only one is valid. And I know that's probably going to upset some people. Well, that's not what we have in this country. We have a celebration of all religions. We do not have a celebration of all religions in this country. We do not. We have the freedom to exercise religions in this country. And quite frankly, I'm going to be biased about this, and I'm not going to care. And actually, I encourage all of the statues of Beelzebub and other satanic or heretical images of Our Lady, like the one that was smashed and destroyed. I'm going to encourage more of that to happen because it needs to. Because if you're trying to make a mockery of someone's faith, you get what's coming to you with that mockery. But between that and people being divided over that, there's now this brand new divide again. And if there's anything that kind of aggravates me about Catholics is the infighting and the division. So you've got your rad trad TLM only exclusive folks, and that's fine. A lot of them, most of them, are absolutely wonderful people. But then there's the very loud, very annoying few that want to turn around and treat people as if they're less Catholic if they don't attend exclusively a TLM mass. Well, it's no different than you see the disparaging, snarky remarks between converts and cradle Catholics. You know, especially now it's kind of coming to light because old JD Vance is a convert. We talked about him yesterday. He converted back in 2019. And everybody wants to jump on the, well, all converts just need to stop talking until they've been Catholic for a few years. And you know what? I'm going to agree with you to an extent. There's plenty of seriously, there's plenty of Catholics out there that are converts that jump on, but they're still poorly catechized. And and you know what? They make mistakes. All that being said is they still are obligated as converts to evangelize and share their conversion stories and help bring others to the church. If you, as a cradle Catholic who haven't done any kind of exegesis or catechetical renewals to any of the knowledge of the Catholic faith, because you've got this long, slow, static existence into the Catholic faith, and you've been living it and going to Mass every single Sunday and every single holy day of obligation for the last 40, 50 years, but you still know jack squat because you're one of those passive cradle Catholics, and not all cradle Catholics are. You're a cradle Catholic. And I know off the top of my head, I can probably name 15 to 20 cradle Catholics that are probably better catechized than most of the staff at the Vatican. Right? So the people I'm referring to in this They might even be better catechized than Pope Francis. Just going to say that there. And it might, it's probably even a stretch, right? So I'm not talking about all cradle Catholics. I'm talking specifically about the ones that attack their own church based on their insecurities. This cradle Catholic over here thinks that because you're a convert, you should shut up. How about no? How about you start expressing the exact same amount of zeal for your faith that the new convert is? Because I'll tell you, one of the worst things that I ever saw was all these cradle Protestants growing up that became very apathetic and passive in their faith. And they would just shrug it off because they didn't have the time or the energy. Well, guess what? That convert is not a threat to your existence as a cradle Catholic. And also for you converts that want to wage war against the insecure cradle Catholic folks that are out there, those cradle Catholics are not a threat against your existence. They're your brothers and they're your sisters in Christ. You know, I think it was Abe Lincoln did the whole a house divided against itself cannot stand when he was referencing scripture in the Civil War. You know, it doesn't work that way. We complain all day long. Well, you're not Catholic enough. Well, this guy's not Catholic enough. Da, 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 da. Okay, I get it. There's a lot of morons out there. I get it. There's a lot of people who were poorly catechized out there, especially if they received their catechesis between like 1987 to 2005. They probably sucked as far as like what they learned about the actual catechism and teachings of the church.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure some of them can't even spell the word catechism. But
it's
that's a completely different argument there. It's a tough one to spell, right? I think it starts with an R. But the point is, these attacks that we complain about on the church, you know, we've got churches being vandalized left and right. There was a relic of St. Mary Magdalene stolen just the other day, about a week ago, I think. And we complain about these. Because it is true that anti-Catholic prejudice is the last socially acceptable prejudice in modern society. And we always know that there's powers that be that are always going to be pushing against the Holy Catholic Church. But you know what? Do you really blame them when Catholics can't even stop fighting with each other? We can't stop fighting with each other. Well, you've only been Catholic for 8 seconds. That's fine. You've been to Mass 3 times in 30 years. Okay? What's that whole thing about the speck in your eye?
But isn't that
last time?
When's the last
time you were absolutely as zealous as you should be about your faith? And also for converts, when's the last time you pulled your head out of the clouds, pulled yourself off of the pedestal you think you're on, and learned some things about how to be Catholic from those cradle Catholics that do have that zeal for the faith, but know more about being Catholic, even if you just got your doctorate in theology and you happen to know more about Catholicism, but know less about being Catholic because you haven't been Catholic very long. Everybody who watched this is now pissed off at me because I called all of us out, including myself. Because guess what? I like to think that with as much reading and writing and studying as I do, I'm knowledgeable about the Catholic faith. Probably more knowledgeable than several cradle Catholics out there. But guess what?
Sure.
Those cradle Catholics probably know more about being Catholic than I do. And those are the ones that I seek to learn from. Because listen, I'm not built for heaven. I struggle with sinful temptations, with sin itself, with procrastination, with a lackadaisical attitude about a lot of things that I'm supposed to be doing, or procrastination because I just push it off to the side. I'm 100% built for hell. And I'm very glad that the grace of God is what's going to keep me from going. But there's too many cradles, and there's too many converts, and there's too many reverts that actually, I think reverts are probably the best class of Catholics because they know how to be Catholic. And then when they revert, it's because they became more knowledgeable about it. So they may be the best class of Catholics out there. You know, you don't know what you got until it's gone. So you come back and you appreciate it more, that kind of thing. But there's way too many out there that want to fight with each other. So all these attacks on our church that we keep seeing, they're being perpetuated because we keep attacking each other. I mean, imagine if this entire show, Ad being a cradle by ritual Catholic, and then the only thing that we do is argue. You know, okay, boomer. If that was going to be my response to everything that Ed said.
Yeah, I get that all the time.
Okay, boomer.
But yeah, as if I don't know anything because I have more experience. You know, I never quite understood that, how that was an insult. You know, when somebody say, okay, boomer. Oh, I'm 19. I know much more about the world than you do.
I did too when I was 19.
But
I forgot most of it now.
Yeah, you knew more. Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly, right? And we at 19, we all think we know everything there is to know. But you know, the part of the problem though is that, and you started off by talking about you know, you could have a satanic statue that gets whatever knocked down or whatever, or a statue out in front of a Catholic church. But the thing is, and we've talked about this many times, that there are actually truths in the world. You know, there are actual truths and
objective truths.
Objective truths. Yeah. So I don't have a problem with if someone walks into a state house building and they have, because they're trying to be equal, next to the nativity scene at Christmas time, they have a statue of Satan. I don't mind someone taking a bat to that, because the truth is that Satan does exist, and that by putting up a statue like that, you're welcoming him to your world and into your society to do evil things. So why wouldn't we want that knocked out? You know,
but Ed, that's a double standard.
And, you know, we all know
it is, and it should be.
Yes, sure it is. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with double standards, because it's kind of like the same thing as, like, you know, people. But here's the thing: people want to silence not what they see as being false, but what they see as not agreeing with them. So it doesn't matter. So there are people that are speaking truthfully that get silenced only because people don't want to hear what they have to say. That's a whole different thing. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, you know, we talk about, well, what is okay to have in society, what is not. And you look at schools, and lately there's been a big controversy about, there's a lot of people going to their school meetings, board meetings, and they're saying, you have pornography, you have actual illustrations of sexual encounters and things in these books, and you're putting it there in the libraries, and you have it available to all the kids, to like middle schoolers and stuff like that. That should be gone. And someone will say, well, that's censorship, and we don't, you know, we want our kids to learn and to grow, and we don't censor anything. Well, that's ridiculous, you know, because they'll compare that to, you know, someone wanting to remove The Catcher in the Rye or Tom Sawyer or something because of language. And there is a difference there. You know, you leave those books in that are actual pieces of literature, and the kids, despite the foul language, might actually learn something from them. But to have books that are there to promote certain ideologies, or that, as I said, will have actual graphic images of sexual behavior, stuff like that, that's ludicrous. That's nonsense. We have to, as a society, be able to tell the difference between those two things and what belongs and what doesn't. It goes back to the same thing. Do the Ten Commandments belong in the rotunda of a state house? I think they do. Does a statue of Satan belong there? No, it certainly does not. Again, there are objective truths out there, and we have to be able to not and choose based on what we like or what we want to see or what we want to hear, but what happens to be truthful. So it's a whole thing. It's kind of like the same thing, like that. I was actually surprised that you said that, because I had heard about that and I'd seen pictures of that, those statues of the Holy Family and Christ unfortunately being beheaded. I was surprised that you said it was being looked at as a hate crime, because it seems like that people will spray paint nasty stuff across Catholic churches. People will torch Catholic churches, and it never, ever is listed as a hate crime when it's quite obvious that it is.
Very rarely.
I mean, yeah, very rarely. And the Catholic Church, people say it all the time, and I find that it's true. Catholics are the lone group that are still allowed to be discriminated against and to be, the victims of hate crimes without it being called a hate crime. I don't understand that either. But
yeah, I mean, look, if I went out and I attacked a mosque or a synagogue, I'm immediately a xenophobic anti-Semite. It's done. I'm on a list from here to Jerusalem at that point. Yeah. But you go and you set fire to a church in anywhere, or you start beheading religious statues at a church. Most of the time, it's vandalism. Kids being kids, and it's vandalism. It's misdemeanor stuff. At right, so there's that. But like I said, you wonder why people attack us this way. It's because we are attacking each other all the time. You're not Catholic enough, or you're trying to be more You're trying to be more Catholic than the church itself. No, no, I don't think that's possible. But no, I'm trying to do my very utmost to align with the teachings of the church, and sometimes that means you point out uncomfortable truths. One of those uncomfortable truths for cradle Catholics is very often converts are better catechized and more knowledgeable on the actual theology. One uncomfortable truth for those converts is that those cradle Catholics have actually been Catholic and know how to be Catholic. And the only thing you're doing as a convert is trying to figure it out as you go along. Yeah, I know, because I'm one of you. You're trying to figure it out as you go along.
Yeah, I mean, but I would
get down into the constant infighting. It kind of reminds me of when I'm like, all right, kids, you've been in the backseat fighting halfway into 9 hours into this 18-hour drive. If you don't stop, I'm going to turn this car around.
Yeah.
Right, because I'm not asking, I'm telling you.
Yeah, but that plays into what I was saying about what should be allowed is truth, regardless of where it's coming from, and that's the same thing. Yeah. So if someone is a convert, a convert, a revert, or a cradle Catholic, okay, let's just choose the person to speak who actually knows what they're talking about, regardless of how they became Catholic. Let's go with the guy who knows what he's doing. It's funny because then also, we also, so many of us create basically our own religion within our religion. And I don't see it as much as I used to, because I wind up with the same people showing up to my Bible studies all the time. And so these people have been with me for years and years, and they know how it goes now. But I used to have folks who would show up, and we'd be discussing a topic in our Bible study, and I would say, and the church teaches, they would have a question about something. I'd say, well, the church teaches blank. And they'd say, well, I don't do that because I don't agree with that. So you know, and then a couple weeks later it would be something else and something else. And I'm saying, so, said they would create their version of Catholicism, and that's what they wanted to hear. And that's what they wanted to hear from me. They wanted me at some point to say, oh, well, that's okay. You don't have to agree with everything the church teaches. You don't have to go along with it. You don't have to live your life that way. You're a smart person. You can figure things out and what works best for you. And so you can create your own version of Catholicism, or whatever faith you're following, which is part of this problem of avoiding truth, of wanting to hear what you want to hear,
Yeah.
So,
because sometimes those truths make us uncomfortable. It's
absolutely.
like me. It's like me as a dad, right? It sucks sometimes, but once every 2 decades or so, I make a mistake, and my wife or my children will point out that mistake, and I have to acknowledge that I am, in fact, somewhat fallible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, once every 2 decades or so, I'm somewhat fallible. But look, I don't like it when my kids say, hey, Dad, you weren't supposed to do that. You said a bad word. Hey, Dad, you lost your temper and you threw that rake in the yard. You're not supposed to do that. I really hate being called out by children, especially my own. But guess what? They're right.
Yeah.
Converts, with all of their zeal and with all of their enthusiasm for finally coming home to Rome, are not going to like it when a cradle Catholic, who just happens to be less knowledgeable on a theological basis, corrects them in their behavior or the way they carry themselves or whatever. And just like those cradle Catholics are not going to like being called out when they've been living a mistake because they lack a certain level of knowledge on theology. But it's those two. It's just like the gender roles between a man and a woman, between a husband and a wife. Those differences are the strength that you can lend to one another. Like, I learn more about being Catholic by being around people who have been Catholic. That's why I like going up to the monastery and hanging out with the Poor Sisters of St. Clair. Like, they're awesome, right? And they're far more experienced in living Catholic lives than I am, even though if it's not going to be the same kind of Catholic life. There's a lot I can learn there. And then I've got people who like, hey, I joined the parish a year before you did, and I'm learning so much from the all of the different writing and the show that you do, and it's really cool. Awesome. Right? They've been a convert longer than I have, but they still learn something. These people have been Catholic longer than I have, so I learned something. But this weird, like, jerk face attitude towards cradles or towards converts, like, stop being a dick. Right? Just because your own fragile ego, whatever side or category you fall into, just because you don't like it, get over it. Have some testicular fortitude. But the fighting with each other's got to stop. People accuse me all the time. People accuse me all the time. They're like, hey, why do you even bother being Catholic? It's not like any of you guys can ever get on the same page. It's like, oh, believe me, I know, but I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. I had one guy, I can't even remember his name, but he's some bigger name in like the Catholic influencers or whatever, make a very passive aggressive remark at me about accusing me that I've monetized my conversion story, and I was already selling that story by Easter or by Pentecost after being confirmed at Easter. Like, well, I haven't monetized anything. Any money that this show makes is entirely imaginary because it doesn't make any. Any money that my blog makes, I hate to break this, but I spend more on ties than this show makes in a year, than my blog makes in a year, which is like $360. I spend more on ties. I spend more of that on groceries in a week. Like, I haven't monetized anything, and those are just tips. Like, hey, I appreciate what you do, I enjoy you, and I like you, so I'm going to support your work.
Yeah.
And it was all because I had a different of opinion than he did. And that was the accusation that got thrown my way. And like I said, I can't even remember his name. But I was just like, sounds like somebody got their feelers in a knot. And I could have perpetuated that by arguing with them. But why? I've got zero desire to always be right. My wife gets that enough from me as it is. I don't have to make everybody else see it.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, she's got awesome taste in choosing someone as awesome as I am.
Oh, yeah, apparently. But why would it matter? Why would it matter even if, I mean, I know this is kind of a small part of the little story, but why would it matter if you monetized your conversion story?
Yeah, I don't know.
If it's helping people, why would it matter if you're making $0, $5, or $5,000? You know, I mean, but this is the thing. What I'm saying is that people focus on the wrong things. They get angry about the wrong things. They get upset about the wrong things. If your conversion story, if everything you say about the Catholic Church is true, if your conversion story leads other people to possibly consider doing the same, I mean, aren't those good things? I don't get it. I mean,
I would think so.
How many times you're on X like that, and you have to
really
redirect people back to the topic? You know?
Oh yeah, you know, because everybody, you know, is walking around with their SSRIs, and they get lost in the weeds because they want to fight whatever ego battle is going on inside their heads rather than what's on print in front of them. But no, like, I had a discussion yesterday morning with a guy named Craig, who's the host of the Catholic Adventure podcast. We had a very different, you know, opinion. At least it seemed that way on paper when we were discussing back and forth. Yet he and I never really attacked each other. We just debated the merits of our arguments and left it at that. And then I still watched his show or the live stream thing that he did. I'm like, just because, I mean, you know, he's been Catholic longer than me, so he probably knows more about being Catholic. And he might even know more about being Catholic, you know, in the legalese of the Catholic Church or the or theology itself. But I still had a very strong opinion that I still hold. Yet we were able to have a discussion that probably lasted 25, 30 minutes, and we never attacked at each other. You know, we never, you know, brought out the kitty claws like, you know, girls who have been best friends for 10 years do when they go to lunch for a Cobb salad. You know, we didn't do any of that. And I don't understand why more Catholics can't. But it's like, most people have gotten so damn thin skin. I'm like, if you were toilet paper, you'd get in touch with your inner self every time you wiped.
It's not good.
No, it's not good. And look, I know this is probably going to upset some people and be like, well, you're one to talk. Yes, I am. I hate to break this to you, but I'm just as Catholic as you are. I'm a hypocrite, just like you are. Okay? Ed's a hypocrite. We're all hypocrites. That's why we go to Mass. That's why we're Catholic. Right? We all suck.
Yeah.
I told you.
Me,
I'm
you know, a week or so ago, up, I said that, you know, that what I mentioned it last week is that the Catholic Church has been around for 2,000 years. That's quite a history. I will never fully comprehend or understand all of that 2,000 years. There's a lot that took place, and I'll still be learning about my faith on my deathbed, I assume. I mean, that's just, and you have to have the humility to admit to that. You know, I will never be the perfect Catholic. I will never be the Catholic who knows every single thing there is to know about being Catholic. You know?
Well, I think Father Hildebrand on Twitter pointed it out. You know, if we look at all these other Protestant churches, you know, the evangelicals, they are expected and encouraged to evangelize. Yet you've got a lot of really bitter cradle Catholics that the only thing they want to do is tell converts to shut up. Well, that whole point, you know, it's twofold: to go forth and be fruitful and multiply. It's not just about your children. It's bringing more people into God's fold. It's bringing more people into the church. And if people are excited about doing that, well, then guess what? Let them go do that. If you see them making theological errors, point them out and smack them in the head with the hammer of St. Anthony. Okay? Do that. Smack them hard. Put them in their place. But if you're just annoyed by their zeal, maybe grow a pair.
Yeah.
And also, if you're making heretical errors and theological errors as a convert, and a cradle Catholic comes along and tries to correct you because you're making mistakes, maybe grow a pair and learn that you still have a lot to learn. It's not that hard to figure out. It's not about choosing sides, because there are no sides. We're Catholic. It's about helping each other grow and not trying to light a fire that's going to burn out of control and burn down everybody standing in the pews wanting to bring more people in the church. And it's not about diminishing the light either. It's about harnessing the light.
Yeah.
It's not that hard to figure. And I know I just made everybody mad. The converts didn't like what I just said. The cradles didn't like what I just said. I don't even know you exist. It's fine. Be mad at me. And I know that sounds harsh. I know it sounds mean, but it's weird to see people fighting over the same thing. Like, especially when they'll end up saying the same things and they all want the same thing, you know, for the most part, because I'm going to give people a lot of benefit of the doubt. There's plenty of the neo-progressive Catholics out there that want nothing more than for the church to become an Anglican derivative. And to those people, I say, get behind me, Satan.
Pretty much.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
You go away.
Yeah. And
go sit in a corner. And then afterwards, you can come out and we can talk about fixing your flawed view. You need a timeout.
Yeah.
But we complain, oh, people are posting anti-Catholic rhetoric and people are, attacking churches. Well, okay. If we want to collectively push back against all of that, it's kind of hard to do when we're too busy fighting with each other.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Very true. Those are the.
It's almost like
there's two things.
It's almost like we've become the Tower of Babel.
We have. But there's two things that I see that Catholics are mistaken about more than they are about anything else, and I see this all the time through all the stuff that I do through the church, and through doing Bible studies and things like that. Is that number one, the vast majority of Catholics are not aware that they are called to evangelize, and they're amazed when I tell them that we are. I find that very interesting. And the other thing, the thing that drives me more crazy, because if somebody's not evangelizing, okay, at least they're not going out there and making theological mistakes when they're trying to bring someone into the church. So it kind of, if you don't know your faith all that well, I would kind of prefer that you live it to the best that you can, but not go out and share falsehoods about the faith of other people. But the other thing, which really drives me crazy, is this thought, which seems to be something that's only developed over the last 20 or 30 years or so, because it certainly wasn't this way when I was younger. But this idea that the church changes with the times, that the church is progressive, and the church can change doctrine and dogma and theology based on the current culture. And I'm shocked that there are so many young people that actually believe that. That's, you know, like the church can come out tomorrow and say, oh, you know, we've rethought this, and in the current climate, abortion is cool. You know what I mean? Like, they actually think that that's a possibility, and that's why you have like organizations like Catholic for Choice and stuff like that, because they think that if they try this long enough and hard enough, that it's eventually they will win out. You know, and it amazes me. And there's for everything. You know, there's groups for women's ordination. There's all these different Catholic groups that support things that are never going to happen, but they're under the misconception that they eventually will, because they say if another, because I've had this argument used on me, is that someone will say, well, if enough Catholics believe we should change A, then the church will change A, because they actually think that the church is like a democracy, where you take a vote every couple of years, and which is weird, because there are some Protestant denominations that run it that way. You know, they take votes, you know, and see which way the people want to go. But no, the Catholic Church has never and will never do that. So it amazes me that people think that way. That it amazes me that they don't know that they are called to evangelize, even if it's just by living their Catholic life in a proper manner. But the fact that people think that, yes, the church has changed its positions many times over the years, and they will continue to do so. I don't know where that comes from. I mean, I guess it's just from their own personal desire that it would change.
I think that comes from, we live in a voting society.
Yeah.
Well, the United States government can vote, you know, can change its policies based on votes. It's a democracy. You know, if enough people decide that we're going to change it, this law, to make it to where, you know, the drinking age is now 19, then that's the way it'll be.
Yeah.
But God didn't give us a ballot box. He gave us a church.
Yeah.
We don't,
and that's why so many people got
anything.
Yeah.
And that's why they get upset. But
about that whole idea when they start
excited
the synod.
about the women.
Well, no, but then when they fired up the synod a couple of years ago, and they thought, oh, this is great. This is my chance to have my voice heard. And then if I bring Becky and Tom and Sue with me, you know, we're going to vote, and the church is going to change to what it teaches about A, B, or C. And they really misunderstood what it was all about. So you're right. I mean, it's not a democracy where people got that. Well, you're right. It is probably influenced by the fact that I know people will say it's not actually a democracy. It's a
constitutional republic. Yes, we
know. But basically, you can use the word democracy, and it sort of fits. But yeah, no, the church is not now. I mean, you imagine that. I mean, Christ walking around 2,000 years ago and say, here's what I'm going to lay out for you. Here's the rules as I see them. But if down the road this doesn't work for you, feel free to change things up, mix it up a little bit. I'm cool with
that.
Well,
if that was the case, he would have chosen 13 apostles, so that way when there was a vote, it couldn't be an even split.
Exactly, right. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, I just it amazes me. But
yeah, we got to have an even split, you know, between we're going to do it this way or do it that way. And then we got to have the tiebreaker, which that always sucks. So it would have been 13 apostles. Yeah. Just the math wasn't there. So that's why he
Yeah.
decided, you know what, we're not going to do the voting thing.
We're not going to do it that way.
Yeah. And I believe he said that while on the boat in the Sea of Galilee,
I gotta look that one up, but you're probably right. Being a recent convert, you're probably more up on the Bible verses than I would be.
Probably. But no,
I'm a cradle
you're
Catholic.
100% right about. Yeah. Like cradle Catholics have barely read a half of the book of John.
What's that?
Right. But no, and what was it? First John? It's like this long as 2 pages, but okay, sure. But no, like you were 100% right about the Synod too, because everybody meant, oh, well, in the Synod, they're going to be discussing, and Pope Francis even told them to study about the possibility of ordaining women. Yeah, he told them to study it. He didn't tell them, if you can come up with a convincing argument, we'll go ahead and allow it. He's like, no, I want you to go deep in there and study it. It's kind of like if I tell my kid, go ahead, find out, stick that fork in that electrical socket. It's because you'll learn a lesson you weren't wanting to learn. Is it okay if I stick this fork in there? Go stick it in there. Find out. Is it okay if we ordain women as deacons? Go study it. You'll find out.
Yeah.
That's the way I take it. I want you to go study it. Why do I want you to go study it? Why did Pope Francis tell these people to go and study it? Because he probably got sick and tired of them asking, can you? He's like, I'll tell you what, go study it.
And then you tell me.
And then you tell me. That's probably the way it went too.
Probably.
But yeah, cradles, converts, stop fighting. If you want to fight somebody, fight the Protestants. Team up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, do that. Stop nitpicking about your tenure. It's not like you're getting paid. I swear. I know it's a joke that what's his name? Anthony on Twitter always talks about. The difference, but that the thing that converts always hate about the Catholics, about the cradle Catholics, is that they don't get the cradle Catholic indulgences. And I know he's being 100% facetious. He's joking because it's hilarious. But some of these people actually act like that's a thing. Like, relax, calm down.
Yeah. Well.
All right. Well, let me ask you this: did you bring anything good today?
I always bring something.
Yeah, but
no, I think this is
good. Started off the week strong. I wonder if you dropped it on Wednesday.
We totally dropped the ball today. I will tell you that. No, this is actually, I think this is kind of cool. I mean, I could be very wrong about this, but I think it's cool. No, this is, I'm going to show it to you first, then I'm going to read something, but it says up there, certificate of admission, if you notice that. I don't know if you see any of that. It's got some priestly signatures down on the bottom. This is really cool. This is actually from May of 1896. And this is for a woman named Anna Schneider. Now, Anna was being admitted into the sodality of the Immaculate Conception of the Blessed Virgin Mary at the church by that name in Milton Junction, Rock County, Wisconsin. And this is what the church looked like at that point. Now, this church was actually built 2 years prior to her being welcomed into that sodality. So the church was built in 1894. She joined the sodality in 1896. And here's what it says. It says, we, the undersigned, do testify by these presents that Anna Schneider was admitted into the sodality established in Milton Junction, Rock County, Wisconsin, under the title of the Immaculate Conception of the Blessed Virgin Mary, 14th day of May in the year 1896, and we declare that she is made partaker of all the indulgences, favors, graces, and privileges which its members enjoy, and that after she shall have departed this life, she will be entitled to the benefits of all the suffrages which are usually offered for deceased sodalists, and given under our hand and seal in the Sodality Chapel on the day and the year aforementioned, and signed by Francis X. Schneider, who was the pastor at that time. So here's significant. It's very interesting because, as I mentioned, this was from 1896. Church was built in 1894, and Francis Xavier Schneider, the priest at that time, was born in 1869 in Moscato, Wisconsin. In September of 1884, he entered the St. Francis Seminary, where after completing his studies, he was ordained to the priesthood by Bishop Otto Zerdetti on June 24th, 1893. His appointment was as an assistant at the Holy Trinity Parish in Milwaukee, and 1 year later, which would have been in 1894, he received his appointment as pastor of St. Joseph's Parish in Fort Atkinson, with the mission parish of this one, Immaculate Conception, at Milton Junction. Thereafter, he served successfully at Sacred Heart Sanitarium in Milwaukee, chaplain for the Dominican Sisters at Corliss, pastoral appointments at St. Mary's Sheboygan Falls, St. John's in Montello, St. John's in Clyman, St. Joseph's East Bristol, and Immaculate Conception in Saukville, and then finally Conception Milton Junction. And it's all within the Archdiocese of Milwaukee. And this priest, who was there, appointed there in 1894, he remained the pastor there until 1944. So quite a long tenure as pastor. And then he lived in retirement at Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin, until he died in 1965. So this is pretty cool. So how old is this then? This is 1894. So you're looking at quick, do the math.
130 years.
Yeah, 130 years old. But I think it's kind of cool that all of this was taking place as this church was just being formed. And then she entered the sodality, and I have the signature there of the very first priest that was ever assigned to that parish. So it's kind of cool. And actually, initially, it wasn't even a parish; it was a mission parish of St. Joseph's, which was several miles down the road. But that church, by the way, is still going strong. In fact, that building that I showed you, this one does not exist anymore. That was torn down in, I believe, the 1950s, and so they unfortunately have a much more modern-looking church there now. But it's a thriving parish. Been there for 130 plus years now, and pretty exciting stuff. So yeah, that was her certificate of admission into the Sodality of the Immaculate Conception. So I thought that's kind of a neat thing to bring up.
Nice. You mentioned that building was torn down in the 50s, and they have a more modern looking church now. It's funny because in the 70s is when my parish was first forming up, because it was an expansion. Like we don't got enough room for these Catholics. We need another place to put them over here, because the parishes that were there or here were overflowing, right? And ours was actually called an experiment, right? Just to see if it's what it was. And the building, it's still there now. That we call it the spaceship, because it was built in the 70s, and it's got this stupid, weird, round kind of thing to it. Now listen, it's this stupid, weird, round thing, and it's got the little spire thing coming up in the front. That used to be the church building, right? Mm-hmm. And when you go in, it's a big old circle and all this other, but that is now a parish house where we have like the music directors doing practice with the choir. We've got the parish secretaries there. The priests have their offices in that building. The deacons have their offices in the building. So if they ever need like a private conversation with a parishioner, makes an appointment to come and talk to them, they go there. And it's mostly just the administrative stuff of the church is handled there. But they never tore the building down. However, directly across from it, we have our church. We have the actual church building, and you've seen the inside of it. It's,
oh yeah, beautiful.
100-foot high, 100-foot high ceilings. It's in the shape of a cross. We've got the transepts on each side, sanctuary, dead center. Yeah, real looking church. But I'm like, man, you know how disappointed I would be if all they did was make that spaceship looking thing bigger? Because I know you're not really supposed to care, but ugly churches turn me off, man. They do. Ugly churches turn me off. Like when I say, I'm like, I get it. Inside is the mass, and the mass is literally heaven on earth. You're face to face with Christ during the mass. But I'm like, I'm of a medieval mindset where, we look at Chartres Cathedral in France, in Normandy. And the whole reason that thing was built is because in medieval times, they literally thought the second coming was just around the corner. And they wanted to build the most beautiful welcome hall for Christ that they could. And I believe that same level of energy and commitment and resources and devotion should go into parishes, right? That's one thing I can say about the Baptist church that I went to growing up as a kid. It's the biggest, prettiest church in the whole town. I'm talking, it's got the big old white pillars holding up the front, the big, like the Roman columns holding up the front. You open it up and you've got this small little foyer area. You've got 2 doors that go in that take you down. You can get into each side of the center aisles or into the side aisles. And you've got the beautiful, like, ornate White House Biltmore estate level architecture and trim all over the ceiling, golden chandeliers hanging. They put effort into it to make it into a house of worship, right? It's not a refurbished Pizza Hut. Right? And I'm not saying that we need to get back to that, but listen, I'm also not disparaging churches that are just a tent outside. Like what we see a lot of people, a lot of Catholics having to do in plenty of countries. Their parish will be a tent. And the only thing that truly matters about it is Christ there? And he is. And that makes it a beautiful church. And so what I'm talking about is not disparaging any of that. What I'm talking about is strictly from an aesthetic point. When I see a Catholic church in my head, if I'm imagining a Catholic church, I'm thinking, St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York.
Yeah.
I'm thinking St. Joseph's, where Father Larry Richards, I'm going to see him and meet him, by the way, this coming year, in Erie, Pennsylvania. And you're invited too. I sent you the link.
It's Erie, PA is not far at all.
No. He's going to be here in South Carolina.
Oh yeah, I know. You said the link is going to be in South Carolina, but I might be down there. You never know.
Yeah, I'm inviting you. It's the 12th Marian Eucharistic Congress or conference. So I'll be attending because my parish priest, Father Christopher Smith, is one of the guest speakers there, speaking with in tandem with Father Richards and several others that are also on EWTN. It's going to be pretty awesome. It's a 2-day thing, so be prepared for a long 2 days. But again, it's just I like the pretty, beautiful Baroque churches, right? I just do.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I agree with you that as long as Christ is there, that's all that matters. And there are some times that's actually can be a very. My issue is when they've got whatever $20 million to spend, and they can either build a $20 million modern atrocity or a $20 million very traditional church, and they go with the modern atrocity. That's when I have an issue. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because where I live, luckily, in the cities around me, you see the beautiful. I mean, my church, my Byzantine church,
I get it. I get
It
it,
was
but
originally
hey, we
built-
got 15 seconds.
Oh, okay. Oh, we do. Go.
Okay. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing. See you later.
See you, folks.